Hello, ladies. How are you today?
Absolutely amazing. How about you?
Well, Tracy E., in past episodes, you were in the sun and the warmth, and now I'm in the sun and warmth.
Nice.
You are back in the cold. I'm like, it's 70 and sunny, so I'm extremely happy with that.
And I've never left the
Awesome.
cold.
No, you haven't. Not
We highly
yet.
recommend it.
Not yet. So we're recording this on the 19th of December. The year 2022 is coming to an end. And before we started going live, we were kind of having a little side conversation. And Tracy E., you brought up this excellent point. And so I wanted to ask you guys, looking back, two questions. One, for myself, I know I had a word for the year. I don't know if either one of you two did. And if you did you live up to that word? Did that word stay with you throughout the year? And second, if you had goals for 2022, are you still accountable for those goals? How did you do? How was your accountability with those goals?
Okay, I can go first. Both of those are excellent questions. I do believe that I had a word of the year. Now, this is really interesting, but I do believe I had a word of the year. And I'm sure if I go back to that episode that we recorded, I said my word of the year was whatever it was, but it did not stay with me. So that word was good when I picked it, but I didn't pick it for the right reasons, which is why it didn't stick with me. So no, I did not live up to that word because I don't even know what it is. So there you go. I think that it's important. Instead of a word of a year, I like to have sort of more of a container or an emotional response or a feeling of what it is that I want to live up to in 2023. And there's lots of words that would fit what that would be for me. Probably the closest thing I can think of to would be discipline, but it's not just that. It isn't just the fact that I'm disciplined. Because when you say discipline, for me, there's this whole emotional response that occurs in my body when I say that word. So it means something to me, but somebody else saying the word discipline is going to possibly mean something totally different to them, right? So yeah, I'm not going with the word of the year. I'm going with more of a generalized feeling, a commitment that I'm going to make for myself for 2023. And really, I think that is the word, is commitment. It's a commitment to
It's got a word.
to my word. Yeah, it is that sort of does embody more of what it is that I'm trying to, I guess, identify or whatever. But yeah, I don't want to be boxed into one word. I guess that's my thing. I don't want to just go, okay, that's the one word. Yeah. In terms of goals, again, interesting. So because I do journal, I can easily go back and look at what I wrote down at the beginning of 2022 and go, oh yeah, this is the list that I came up with then. And some of them I have nailed, bang on, did really well with. Some of them I did not. And some of them I just took right off the list because they were not, as time went on through the year. That goal, while it was important in January, was not important in June. Things in my life had changed, circumstances had changed, and I gave myself the permission to remove that goal because I was like, I'm not going to come to the end of 2023 and look at that and go, well, you didn't do that. It's like, no, I decided that this was not going to be a priority this year. I'm going to move it either off completely or it might show up in a different year. And that is again, Michelle, as you and I both know, that is the biggest thing about journaling, is that when you have written it down, it's easy to go back. But I would like to say that for a lot of us, we don't do that. We don't write that down. We don't write down what those goals are. We say them, we proclaim them at the beginning of the year. I know for me, before I started journaling, I seem to have the same ones over and over and over again, year after year. And I think that's the problem. Like, because they're not written down, there's nothing to look at. There's no way to make progress on it. There's no way to kind of deconstruct what that goal is going to look like and how you're actually going to get there, because it's just floating up here somewhere. It's just, out in the stratosphere, which is why I think it's so important to journal it and to actually write it down and be accountable to it. And here's the thing, like we're talking about a year goal, but like you can have like a weekly goal, you can have a daily goal, you can have a monthly goal. And if you bother to write it down, and even if it's just a simple check mark that you did it, if that's all you can do, then just doing that allows you to see the progress that you're making. Because I know we make progress. We end up at the end of the year and go, I'm definitely not the same person that started 2022. I have grown in a lot of ways. But if you can't pinpoint that, if you can't identify that, then it's like all of that growth has happened and you're not really aware of where the transformations you have made within yourself. And that is what's so, I think, so magnificent about taking the time just to even jotting stuff down. It doesn't have to be pages, just a sentence and a check mark.
Tracy, two things that really are poignant for me with your conversation. One, the fact that you said, I took that goal off. It didn't fit my life anymore. I think I have done the same thing, and it is, people feel if they remove that goal, they failed. And I always say that means it wasn't the right goal for you. Yeah. It might be a goal you want, but you don't have the reason to do it yet. You haven't dug deep and done the work to understand why that goal is important. And until you don't understand it, and I'm not saying that was yours, but it is okay to change, delete, or leave a goal. There is nothing wrong with that, but you have to understand why you do that.
Yes, that's the critical part. It's not like, oh, I'm just not going to bother anymore. It really is circumstances that have happened in your life that say, okay, this isn't relevant right now.
Right.
Your whys, I mean, I'm always big on, if you have a goal, then you need 7 whys for that goal to begin with, as a bare minimum. 11's even better, but 7 to begin with, in order to make that concrete in your own mind as to why it is that it's important and that you're going for it. But things happen. Life happens to all of us. And as a result of that, you could end up taking all of your goals off the table. I mean, you go through some major trauma, like, my sister lost her husband this year. Like, that trajectory has now completely changed and altered her life. So whatever her goals were at that point were no longer relevant, because she is in a phase of her life that she needs to do something different, right? She needs to take care of herself, and they can become next year's goals or the year after. But so, yeah, I think we need to give ourselves the permission to be able to say, this isn't for me right now. And this is the reason why it's not for me right now. It's not that it's not important, but I'm going to shelve it for the rest of the year or for 2 years or whatever. And it's not a problem. It's not a problem. Yeah.
Right. Excellent. Tracy G?
Oh, I hit everything 100%.
Well done, my friend.
Did not. Because I don't journal, I don't know what my goals were at the beginning of 2022, but no, I do that letter. I do a letter. So I haven't looked at it for a while, so not sure. But throughout the year, like I find that really interesting. What you're saying is just if I look at what my word would have been, and I feel this word is overused sometimes, clarity, but I just really started to hone in. And for me, I feel like I'm quite organized, but it really helped organize my thoughts into what I really wanted my life to be, which included my business and things like that. And this year, I feel I met my new intentions, and they weren't what it was at the beginning. At 2022, at the beginning, was very business driven, like, this is what you've got to do, Tracy. And as I developed as for me, out of my comfort zone, there's a lot of good, juicy stuff that happened that just made me feel better as growing as a person. So I didn't hit my mark on my business goals. But I definitely feel I hit my mark on my personal goals. And I feel that going into 2023, I'm just really, I talk the talk, and I feel now that I'm behind it. Like if I say, you go out there and be yourself, that I really am going out and being myself. So that's
Cue the
Awesome.
confetti. Cue the confetti. That's amazing. Balloons, like seriously.
I
That's
love
like,
it. I love it. And you know
yeah.
what I love? Okay, I'll wait. Go
okay.
ahead.
And I'll just say, because I felt that the business side was the one that was giving me the personal growth, where I got them confused.
Mhm.
The personal growth gives me the business side, and I felt it, if you did this in business, it would do this. So I flipped.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Well, for me, my word was intentional. And I really would try to continue that word throughout, because I was, in certain aspects of my life, very people pleaser. So when I used the word intentional, it was, am I intentional in what I'm doing, or am I people pleasing? Am I intentional or people pleasing? So it allowed me to have relationships I wanted to have goals I wanted to, that were intentional to my values and intentional to the person I wanted to be, including my business. And I got intentional within my business. So Tracy G, you talked about that a little bit with the clarity, and you used the word intention. It's a little bit of clarity, intentional, kind of intertwines within each other. I did not hit all my goals. Tracy E, you talked about taking them off and shelving it. We do know I had to shelve my race goal because of my cancer. But it's strong right here for my next set of goals. Business goals, nope, I didn't hit. But as we're sitting here, and you have 3 women with 3 different sets of goals, and here's the 3 of us telling you, audience, we did not hit our goals. And none of us, I don't want to say use the word, are beating ourselves up for it. And here is why. Because I know all 3 of us have learned from our journey to get to that goal. And that's what I think people get confused about, is they focus on the goal and what that end result is, when you have to be focusing on the journey that you're taking to the goal. Because if you just focus on the end result, it's going to be this false happiness, because this journey that you're taking is where all this growth is coming from. Tracy G, you just talked about it, where you're like, this growth, I had this personal growth that I'm now bringing into my business. Tracy E, we were talking to you before we went live on your growth, on your live exposure within your business. And so we might not have reached our goal, but we all 3 can talk about the growth we had within our journey to our goals. So I'm standing here in front of you too to say, no, I didn't hit all my goals. And okay.
I think what's really important that you said, Michelle, is the fact that when the goal hasn't been met, if it's not something that we have taken off of our list, like you, because you had cancer, so the race is not going to happen this year. If it's not something like that, and you have literally just not met the goal and not beaten yourself up for it, I think what's really important on how not to do that process is to literally try to be a scientist within your own goal and put a scientist hat on, so that it's like, this is the goal, so like here's the result of the experiment that I'm looking for. What was it that, how did the experiment go? What worked in that experiment, what didn't work in the experiment? If I was to do that goal again, what would I change? What factors would I deliberately take out that what would I add in? And it allows you to come at that goal with a set of different eyes than, I didn't do it, I failed, oh my God, like here we go again, like I just can never do this. Instead of that kind of energy to go, okay, so what can I actually learn from this without beating myself up?
Yes.
And I think that's part of
growth.
it too, is when you're doing those goals and you do decide to push them to the side, to really, like you said, look at the information, because are you pushing them aside because of a comfort? And that's what I feel really good about this year, is I know any goals that I chose not to pursue that would say on the list, it wasn't because of comfort. It wasn't because it was out of my comfort zone. And so I'm going to just let those ones slide. And I think that's one of my biggest personal growths, is that I'm not allowing getting out of my comfort zone to come in the way of what where I want to go. So that's another thing to look at. Why are you choosing not to do that goal?
Yeah.
And
so good.
And it's all okay. It's all okay. Like, and sometimes I don't like the word goals, because I think people are like, oh, it's January 1st, I have to have a goal. So you go and make a goal. And you don't need, call it a passion, call it a accomplishment, call it I don't care what you call it. And if you sit down and say, I have to make a goal, don't make a goal. You don't have to make a goal come 1/1 of any year. There is no rule that says that. If you want growth, then you want to make changes, then yes. But just because you hit a date, or I'm 40 years old, or by 50, or 20, or whatever, the three of us set goals because we love to grow. That's what happens when you set a goal. You better be ready to grow, because you're going to have to make changes. And with change comes growth. But don't do it because you have to do it.
Yeah. But check in on yourself to see if this is the life you want. And if it's not, you might want to set a couple of goals.
Right. I totally agree with you.
Absolutely.
So we would love to hear how your 2022 was. And are you accountable to what your goals were? And don't forget to hit subscribe. Share our episode if you know somebody who needed to hear what we had to say. And hit those notifications so you know when our next episode comes out, which, by the way, is every Wednesday. Until next time, have a great day.
Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you as a regular member of our community.